Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining. It's evening for me, but whatever time of day it is for you, I'm glad you made some time for us. There may be a few more people trickling in over the next couple of minutes, so we'll just kind of hold here for a while before getting started with the content. As we are waiting, it would be really helpful for me if you could do a number of things just so we can get to know you a little bit. First thing being renaming yourself in your Zoom name to add whatever institution you are coming from, just so everyone can know where that is. And then also, if you are in a place where you can turn on your camera, that's always nice for us just so we know who's there and who we're talking to. So we can get started, and I can officially welcome you to the Alt Protein Project information session for the 2026 application cycle. We'll be spending the next hour together really just exploring the Alt Protein Project, how it can fit into everything else that's going on in your university, and then, of course, how you can join the community to become an Alt Protein champion as a student and throughout your career. So to get everybody warmed up, I am going to open a quick poll just so I kind of know where we are coming from. Um, if I can do it without having to pause for too long. There we go. So yes, I recognize that we are a small group here, but it'll still be nice for me to be able to refer back to. So I'd love to know where you're calling in from. Um, what stage of your education or career you're in, and then anything that excites you or a big question that you have about the Alt Protein Project. Well, it has been a minute of very painful silence on my end. So you are welcome. I'm going to leave the poll open for you to continue answering. But I am going to move on. And I do just want to say this often happens for, at least again, in my evening sessions, just based on where most of our students come from, that the second session of the day is a little bit smaller of a crowd. I did one earlier today, and there was, I think, around 30 people there. Um, the benefit of this is that we can have more of a discussion. Since there isn't too big of a crowd, I would encourage and welcome you to, come off mute, ask questions in the chat throughout the entire time. It'll be a little more manageable, and we don't need to differentiate like the Q&A section from the information sharing section. So if there is anything that you're curious about in the beginning or throughout the presentation, please let me know. I am joined, luckily, by Hannah Barlow, someone else on my team who will be monitoring the chat because I do not have the ability to do that and give the presentation at the same time. So, with that, since I kind of, oh, well, that's what I was just telling you to do. Um, but since I was just referencing who else is on the call, I think it's a great time for us to introduce ourselves officially. I'll let Hannah go first, introduce herself, where she's coming from, and then I will take it away.
Hi, everyone. As Nathan mentioned, my name is Hannah Barlow, and I'm one of the Alt Protein Project's academic community specialists. And so I work with Nathan to support our global community and program with running our various events, creating and updating all of the different resources that we provide, and providing regional mentorship to several of our specific university groups. So it's incredible that I get to just interface with student leaders and hear about the accomplishments that they're conducting and creating on their university campuses within the alt protein field. I'm based in Los Angeles, California, on the west coast of the United States. And so luckily I am blessed with very good weather very frequently, although right now is not one of those times and it's a bit rainy where I am. But that's me, so it's great to meet you all. Thanks for joining today.
Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, and on my side, my name is Nathan Ahlgrim. I am the Senior Academic Community Manager at GFI, and very similar to Hannah, my entire role is helping to manage and support our global network of the Alt Protein Project as they help grow their universities into engines of education, research, and innovation in the alternative protein space. Just so y'all know what to expect. I plan to really only spend about half the time presenting information because I really do think that the most useful information is going to be whatever is very specific to your case in your university. So, like I said before, you are welcome to interrupt me given the size of our audience. whatever information you need. My goal is to give it to you. I'll start by introducing the Alt Protein Project and the Good Food Institute for those of you who are unfamiliar, talk about the criteria that we have for our program, go over some pointers for the application, and then I will get to brag about the project and talk about what makes it special. After that, we will have plenty of time to address any sort of questions that you have. And before we get going, I do want to acknowledge that there's about to be a lot of text on these slides. I spent a few years teaching college classes, and this is the thing that I usually try and avoid. But my goal is for this presentation to be a lasting resource, both for you and any of your colleagues or other students that weren't able to attend live. And if it was just a bunch of pictures, it wouldn't really be a great resource for that case. So the reason that I'm saying that is don't worry about taking notes. We will be sharing this afterwards, both the presentation and the recording. So you can just take in the information and if anything, take notes about how it might apply to you and any ideas that come up. That was supposed to be a transition. There we go. Maybe. So I'll start by going over very quickly the theory of change that the Good Food Institute works under, and then especially how the Alt Protein Project contributes to that mission. Just like Hannah, I am coming from the US team. I'm on the East Coast in North Carolina, but I do have the privilege of working with a global team of experts, with our affiliates in 6 other regions across the globe, because we recognize the need for regional and local expertise to best meet the needs of specific political climates, hubs of technical expertise and natural resource production, and of course, differences in cultural foodways. But not only geographic diversity, we really take a diversity of actions in working towards being this field catalyst. We do function as a nonprofit funded entirely by philanthropy, which means that we get to take the actions that will be most beneficial to the most stakeholders, so the widest group of stakeholders. We really do operate under the ethic that a rising tide lifts all boats. And so I am coming from the science and technology team, and our goal is to really advance that foundational open access research, as well as the people who will then be doing that research. A lot of the students who are in the Alt Protein Project are exactly those kinds of people. We also have a corporate engagement team that partners with companies and investors across the globe to drive investment and accelerate innovation in the alternative protein space. And we have an incredibly vital policy team that advocates for fair policy and public research investment and infrastructure investment to allow alternative proteins to scale and become accessible in the way that we know is so vital. And we really organize everything that we do around the recognized challenge that meat, egg, and dairy production is not sustainable. It's very inefficient, and demand is only growing. Now, when other organizations and other initiatives really try and focus on that behavior change, getting people to give up the foods they love, we know that we kind of run into a ceiling of how many people are willing to make those changes and give up things that are very core to their identity, their culture, their history. So instead of driving behavior change, what we target is a more effective and a more sustainable default option, basically giving them a better choice without having to give up the foods that they love. Alternative proteins that are just as delicious, affordable, and accessible as what they are used to. Now, the purpose of this information session is not to go into the science of alternative proteins. Really, I'm just putting this up here to show you how we frame the alternative protein landscape, and that is food produced through made from plants, cultivated from animal cells, or produced via fermentation that directly replicate that animal product experience, especially with meat. So if you are rather new to the field or just kind of want to boost your knowledge, I would very strongly recommend our free online course, learn.gfi.org. I will say that as a bonus, that course is a prerequisite for the training program we bring all of our students through at the beginning of their time with us over June and July. So if you take it now, you'll be ahead of the game if you are accepted into the Alt Protein Project. And finally, I do just kind of want to point out like what we actually do here. Because as many of you know, like we don't yet live in a world where these foods that you saw on the previous slide are available to everyone. And there's a lot of work to be done. So we work very deliberately on that open access model, not only our scientific research, but our market analysis and policy analyses as well. Because our whole goal is to identify the gaps in the ecosystem that will have the greatest impact once filled, so that the scientists and the companies are really targeting the things that will move the market forward as quickly as possible. And that is, of course, where we come to the Alt Protein Project. Because we know that allowing uh, the protein sources and the protein content of our food system to diversify really will take a thriving ecosystem of scientists, innovators, and other professionals. A lot of those training programs don't yet exist. And that is precisely where the student leaders of the Alt Protein Project come in. Our whole goal is to find, train, and empower student leaders at universities that will then directly build those academic research ecosystems. So, when it comes to conceptualizing the Alt Protein Project, we function under five primary objectives. And the two on the left are those that I kind of identify as the more typical or standard student leadership initiatives that would be common with other student groups at your university. First of all, there are a lot of people who either don't know about alternative proteins at all or don't know why they are important for people, for the planet, or for animals. So a lot of what you will be doing is just spreading that message and showing people the power that the alternative protein space promises in the food system. And again, like many other student organizations, building a community so that you have peers to work with, you have professional contacts that you can network with and grow your own career is an incredibly vital for especially for the following steps of your career after you graduate. But the three objectives that are on the right are the things that I really find make the Alt Protein Project special. And there are fantastic examples of all three of these. In the education space, we now have literal dozens of examples of student-led courses that are truly unique in their universities. There would be no alternative protein content in the curriculum were it not for direct student leadership, which is an incredibly powerful impact that our students have had. On the research side, students have also engaged in their own independent research, anything from their senior capstone project to their PhD dissertation. And alongside this is an incredibly powerful catalyst role that many of our students have played in encouraging their faculty advisors to explore the alternative protein research landscape. In fact, many of our most prominent alternative protein researchers today in the entire world are only in the field because of a project that their students wanted to do. And that is an incredibly powerful impact that people can have. And then innovation, students work directly with, local startups and international conglomerates to bring them in for career days, do things like site visits and tours, even internship pipelines, and there are some students who have spun out their own innovative startups as well, coming out of their degree program. Now, we first conceptualized this back in 2020, and when I say we, that wasn't me. I wasn't on the team yet. All credit goes to my supervisor, Amy Huang, and her partner back then. But we started with five universities, and we have since expanded to over 70 groups in over 20 countries. We're at the point that we can't even fit logos of universities on anymore. And that is incredibly exciting. But of course, we're here because we are looking to expand that even more. And I do just kind of want to highlight a very brief snapshot of what it looks like to have these sorts of effects on your university ecosystem. So every 6 months, we have our student groups submit an impact report just to really celebrate what they have accomplished and achieved over that time. And this is just a snapshot of really the last 6 months from July to December of 2025. You'll see that we have, more than 800 members with, excuse me, 14,000 plus attendees at their events just over the last 6 months. More than a dozen courses with five coming up this year, and truly dozens of research projects that our students are involved in. This is just a very brief taste of all of it. You can either snap that QR code or go to the link that Hannah will drop. I know I didn't prime you for this, so my apologies. To our impact page, there are some great examples there to give you some ideas of what it might look like to have this sort of impact as APP leaders. And I do just want to emphasize that, we really do encourage our groups to be creative. There are a lot of projects that I would have never suggested because I never would have thought of it. Like one example on the top left, we had a group go into a middle school and teach them about scaffolding for cultivated meat. That is not something that I would have immediately thought as an outreach event with something that is so technical. But they were incredibly creative. It was incredibly effective and engaging. And so as we advise and mentor groups through their work, we really do deliberately encourage this sort of strategic freedom and creativity as well. So, all that said, now we can get into the program and the application itself. I do want to pause here because I'm not looking at all at the chat. Anything that I should address at this point, Hannah?
Not really. There was an earlier question about Smart Protein Project versus Alt Protein Project, but I answered it in the chat.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So now we can start thinking about, who are we looking for in this application? So there are certain universities that like are a more obvious fit. We are definitely looking for leaders coming from research universities that have these foundations for a potential alt protein ecosystem. Now, please note that I said potential. If there is absolutely nothing going on at your university yet, that is okay. That's kind of the point. You can be that first mover at your university. So, universities that do have mechanisms to encourage student leadership do help. It allows you to move a lot quicker and a lot more effectively. So, examples are things like student teaching fellowships that facilitate student-led course creation and development, or other just independent student research projects, of course. Universities that are within hubs of agricultural technology, biotech, or manufacturing can be incredibly powerful because of then those industry connections that you do have. And then, of course, programs that fall within one of the many disciplines that are integral to alternative protein research, anything from tissue engineering, plant biology, agricultural sciences, crop breeding. It very much spans a very wide gamut. But I do want to say, as I kind of outline this, that this is not all inclusive. And especially since this is such a new field, many of our strongest existing research partners, including some grantees of our big research grants program, entered the alt protein space almost as a side project because they were studying a relevant topic or technique. So again, you don't really need to think that something needs to already be happening specifically in alternative proteins to be a great fit for our community. This is not going to be the last time that I talk about our commitment to a diverse community within the Alt Protein Project, and I truly mean that in the most expansive um, way that I can. Our partner universities, yes, do need to be engaged in research, but that's not the same thing as saying we will only accept one kind of university. So, big research powerhouses, great. Land grant universities or minority serving institutions, which I recognize are kind of a US centric designation, are also fantastic. Primarily undergraduate institutions are also great partners as well. So this is going to be true for everything that I say. If you are have any doubt about whether your university is a great fit, I urge you to not self-reject. You can directly ask me. You can email me directly and just kind of check if I think that it would be a good fit. Or you can just send in your application. And what I will promise all of you is that as long as I can see in your application that a real person wrote it, more information on that later, but like I can see what you are trying to do with you as an individual and as a team, I will respond and give you feedback. So if we are not able to accept you, I'll still tell you why. I'll share some resources, all of that. So truly, submitting an application opens up that conversation, regardless of whether you stay in our community or not. And I would really love to read applications from everyone here. So when we zoom in then to the specifics on the student leaders, we do need groups of at least two co-organizers. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But really everyone involved in the project. This probably will be self-explanatory, but we want people who are committed to our mission of a thriving world fed sustainably. That's the driving force behind everything that we do. So it really doesn't make sense if you are not on board with advocating for that. We are very deliberately a student-led organization, which means all of our leaders, therefore all of our applicants, should be actively enrolled in a degree program. This can be undergraduate, graduate, really anything, but we are definitely student-centric. Of course, we will require a time commitment, especially at the beginning, to build your team, get established at your university. So expect a commitment of about 5 to 10 hours per week. And then we want to make sure that at least one applicant has some experience in community organizing. We have found that sometimes even more important than a technical expertise in alternative protein science is the ability to organize, manage a team, and really help build a strategic plan to bring everyone on board and help delegate and organize a really effective team so that not just one person is doing everything. We have found it helpful for at least one person to be housed in a key scientific discipline for alternative proteins. But I do want to again note here that many of our strongest leaders come from outside the traditional science engineering fields. So this includes policy, law, business, economics, and more. Um, but the reason why we find power in having at least one being housed within a scientific discipline is because it's a lot easier to engage with that side of the university if you are enrolled in those programs and departments, and frankly, to have a relative fluency in scientific research.
Nathan, I'll pause you there because we have a great question in the chat
Yeah,
about our recommendations for finding co-organizing partners. If you feel like you're the only one at your university that's currently interested in alt proteins, where to start your search?
yeah, that's a great question. I know that you've worked with a lot of your groups on recruitment and this kind of question. Do you want to share your advice first?
Yeah, I think my first instinct is to um, point you to just how interdisciplinary alternative proteins are. And so even if there's, not a specific alternative protein or cellular agriculture club on your campus already that you could find people that are immediately on board from. I think there's so many different fields like tissue engineering, even biology more broadly, a lot of the STEM fields more broadly, where you can look for not only people that have that scientific background, but also people that are mission aligned. Perhaps there's groups that are focusing on environmental sustainability or food justice, food security, things like that, where alternative proteins really touch on a lot of these cause areas. And so even if people don't have that, um, extensive background or training in alternative proteins, oftentimes one of these cause areas can be something that they're really passionate about, and you could be the person to show them how what they're studying could be applied towards these areas that they really care about. And so, more tangibly, I know that a lot of departments will have like newsletters or weekly issues that go over email to the students in their department. And so I've seen in the past, students will ask the administrators that are in charge of those newsletters to kind of send out a call for people interested in food and sustainability, food tech, things like that, to then connect with you or whoever is sending that blast. So that's my first thought and reaction, but Nathan, curious if you have others.
Yeah, I certainly agree with all of that. You mentioned those other groups. So joining a general body meeting of those other groups, environmental, effective altruism, animal advocacy, that sort of thing, can be really effective. And then this is true both for getting initial leaders and then expanding your team once you are established. There are a lot of professors that are open to the idea of you either popping in at the beginning of their class, like first 3 minutes, last 3 minutes, um, to just kind of pitch your group, say that you are looking for people to build it, um, alongside you, of course. And then you can also similarly target those classes that would be really relevant and probably have a lot of people that are enthusiastic but unaware. So people who are environmentally minded, food minded, agriculture minded, that can be great ways to find possible partners. Because I can say um, firsthand, I'm kind of an example of one of those people that was very passionate and completely unaware of alternative proteins. Before I joined GFI in 2022, I was searching for a job in environmental sustainability, and I truly like had not thought about the food system ever. I probably should have, but I didn't. And the resources and going to some of the seminars and webinars that GFI hosted, like very strongly convinced me that this was an incredibly impactful and effective way to approach that issue. So you can be that person for people at your campus. And as we are talking about, effective leaders, where to find them, I do also want to emphasize here something that we've learned over the years in working with, frankly, some of the most brilliant people that I've ever met. The student leaders in the Alt Protein Project are absolutely incredible. And some of the most high performing and stellar leaders that we have not been able to keep their group sustainable into a second year because they aren't realistic about their commitments. Honestly, I would imagine that the fact that all of you are here means that this is not your only project. You have research, you have a job, you have other sorts of advocacy, student leadership projects. And a lot of times, high achievers try and do everything themselves. And we have seen the brightest stars burn out really quickly because they try and do everything instead of focusing on growing their leadership team. I say this to emphasize that we are much more enthusiastic about an applicant who is really new to the alt protein space, but has a plan and enthusiasm to build their team rather than an applicant that's like in the middle of really cutting edge and exciting alt protein research, but doesn't really have the motivation to look beyond their lab for a potential impact. So, using all of the techniques that Hannah discussed, and we can talk about that more, that's really what we do want to see from our applicant team. If you don't have a big team now, tell us very specifically how you want to build it, what you would want that structure to look like, so we can kind of see what your plans for the future are. Last thing in terms of requirements in this respect, we want at least one person on the application team to be planning to stick around for at least 2 years, to help have some semblance of stability as your group is getting off the ground. So that means if you are on this call and you are graduating at the end of this semester, that's totally fine. We would just be looking for someone on your team to be graduating August 2028 or later, so that when you leave, there is still some continuity there.
Nathan,
Now,
I'll take
go.
this pause to
Yes,
raise
please.
a couple more questions. One question is about Ankit is interested in algal-based proteins, and they're curious if GFI includes algae within its AP portfolio, and if there are any ongoing or planned initiatives. And then there's a second question, which I'll raise after we discuss that one.
Yeah. So the short answer is yes. It is slightly more complicated than that. It basically depends on the application for what those algal proteins would be used for. Since we focus so strongly on the products that replicate animal sensory experiences, there are many applications for algae and their byproducts to be either integrated or used as like the actual biomass for flavorants, the protein content itself, anything else like that. So absolutely, being integrated into final products that do seek to replicate those sensory experiences are something that many of our projects have directly targeted as well. And I forget the second question, so Hannah, if you could please remind me.
No worries, I did not raise it yet, so that's not on you. So Marielle says they graduated in December 2025. Would it be possible for them to serve as co-organizer at the university where they completed their degree? They're also very likely to begin a postgraduate program this year.
Hmm. Well, so if you do have any plans of entering a an advanced degree. I don't know where you graduated from, with what degree, but undergraduate, graduate students, we welcome them. We actually encourage a mixed leadership team of both undergraduate and graduate. That's kind of our best case scenario. So if you're going to be going back to school, that's a very simple answer and solution there. If not, we do have some precedent for recent graduates or people on their way out being the ones to really organize and kickstart that team. So I am in North Carolina, and geographically, the second closest to me, one of the ones that I mentor at North Carolina State University, as one example, this basically happened. Someone was graduating from her master's program, really wanted to get a group off the ground, but like was leaving. So what she did was host information sessions, brought me to campus, and organized a leadership team that then ended up being the ones to send in an application. So she wasn't even on the application, but it's only because of her that that group exists in the first place. That is incredible impact there. So that's what I would encourage you to kind of focus on. You would be welcome to continue contributing to that group after they are established. But just with our focus, we would really be looking for all of the leadership positions, co-presidents, vice presidents, that sort of thing, being those that are still in a degree program.
Those are all the questions for now. And we got some thank yous, so it seems like no follow-ups for now.
Excellent. Well, just zooming ahead a little bit to give you a timeline of what to expect. Now is a great time, of course, to build your team. The application will be closing at the end of March. And then for those that advance to the next round, we will be conducting interviews the following 2 months in April and May. Those that we do select to join our community will be informed of that in early May. And then we do have that training program I referenced earlier over June and July, excuse me, that really gives you all of the foundational information that you need to be effective leaders in this space. Once you make it through there, by the time August rolls around, then you will be official members of our Alt Protein Project community. And to just kind of make sure that all of this is completely understood, of course, please send in your applications. Um, Pretty much everything that I have gone over is what we define as our program prerequisites, but please read those. The two co-organizers, all of these being students, are the two most prominent that people sometimes forget when they send in their application. Um, and really read through our programmatic objectives and think about different ways that you might be able to do that in our student group resource hub. That could give you some great ideas to present in your application. And when I'm talking about ideas, I do just want to acknowledge the world that we live in right now. I'm looking for specific and personal answers. I care so much more about the ideas than the polished language that you would use. And I am speaking very specifically about the use of generative AI, ChatGPT, whatever your program of choice is. I read a lot of applications that are very obviously only ChatGPT. And I do say only specifically because if you want to use that to clean up your language, that's totally fine. But I really do need to see something that is specific to you and your team. What are some goals that you have? Who specifically in your university, name a professor that you think would be really great to work with for a class, for research, something like that. As an example, already this year, I've read applications that have included things like I have significant experience in leadership and student organizing. I will focus on building an inclusive platform and connecting with faculty. Those sentiments are great if they are then paired with specific examples of what you're talking about. These applications didn't. It was basically just saying, like summarizing our prerequisites and saying that they would do them. I'm not going to move that application forward because it doesn't tell me anything about what might exist at your university. So please, you are welcome to use any sort of AI tools as long as you actually have ideas that are specific to you and your team. And on that note, our goal is to really make sure that this is accessible for all student leaders, regardless of where you are coming from. With the limitations of myself and our program being what they are, that does mean that we do need a working language or a working knowledge of the English language, because all of our programming and resources are in English. However, we know that there are many tools, translation tools and otherwise, that can really facilitate comprehension and communication at this point. So, if with kind of the adjunct of whatever technology that you use, you are able to communicate and understand the content that is in English, that's enough for us. We do not require complete fluency here. And as I am talking about this, I mentioned the use of AI. I review all of our applications in collaboration with my colleagues from across our global affiliates so that they can help me understand if the way that I'm reading it is, completely misunderstanding a cultural context, a language context, whatever that might be. And in our very programming, we do our best to make it as accessible as possible, this call being a great example. This is the second of two sessions. It's the exact same content. We try and hold most of our events twice so that people are not required to come in at like 4 o'clock in the morning or other time that is just incredibly inconvenient for them. All of this is with the invitation to take action now. Because, frankly, regardless of whether or not you are accepted into our 2026 cohort, you can start an alternative protein focused student group at your university. We have plenty of resources, our student resource hub being a great example. And we would encourage you to do that. You don't have to be branded as the Alt Protein Project in order to make that impact. In fact, there are a handful of examples now from across our community where the first year they applied, we were not able to accept them. They started a group anyways. They applied again the next year, and then they've already got a group. They were one of the strongest applications. And we, of course, accepted them the following year. And let's say, even if you do apply and we aren't able to accept you, that doesn't mean I will never talk to you again. I would welcome continued emails, any sort of advice, and I would do my best to support you anyways, just in a slightly different capacity than if you were connected with the Alt Protein project. And before we go into our resources, I just do want to note Some things that I've already mentioned and just kind of hopefully clearing up any questions. We do require a co-founder, as I mentioned previously. As I also said earlier, kind of our ideal is that a leadership team contains both undergraduate and graduate leaders. Um, and this can be from anywhere. We do not require applications to come from countries where we already have a footprint as an organization. In fact, some of our most impactful groups are specifically in places where GFI does not have a footprint because then they are the most prominent voices in alternative proteins, sometimes in their entire country. And it's absolutely incredible to see what they are able to do. Now, I didn't actually see from the poll, I'm going to be looking this up after the call, if any faculty are on this call. But I know there were in session one, and we absolutely encourage and are very grateful for any faculty who want to act as mentors and as advisors to our student leaders. I will just say again that we are very deliberately student centric. So if you do want to contribute, GFI has a lot of different communities and opportunities there. You can reach out to me directly, and I would love to explore those options with you. Kind of what I just said. Then, of course, there's the question about how we will support you. So we have a lot of different resources here. We do very deliberately work in our training program to make sure that you are set up for success with all of the skills that you need. Honestly, a lot of it isn't specific to alternative proteins. That team management, recruitment, leadership, and delegation are things that we very deliberately help you build your skills in. There is a very hands-on process where we help you develop a strategic plan so you can make sure you're focusing your limited time in what makes the most sense and what will make the greatest impact. We'll go through strategies and share resources for generating that buzz and excitement across your university. We do also work with a ecosystem mapping exercise that frankly, and apologies if there are faculty in on the call. Once you're done with that, you will be the resident experts at your university because you will be able to see all of those connections even between departments, where possible collaborations or connections can come, even if that is something that is outside of faculty awareness. And of course, we just help you bring it all together so that you can be that node in the alternative protein hub at your university. All of this is in the context of direct mentorship. Every group has a personal mentor. You see the group on the left here that are either from GFI staff or alumni from the Alt Protein Project that are now working in a related field, food, alt proteins, policy, whatever that might be. That truly is one of the greatest resources that we offer because you are getting that direct expertise and then direct connections whenever you need them. But not only that, we do have subject matter expertise from across the entire ecosystem, whether that be specific technical expertise for fermentation, plant-based, or cultivated meat, experts in engaging with startups in alternative protein policy, and much more. I can say from experience that our colleagues love working with and presenting with and teaching alt protein project leaders, so they are always just a call away. In addition to that, we host monthly events for skill building, workshops, learning best practices from each other, so you don't need to make the same struggles and go through those same barriers yourselves once other people have learned from it. We have a WhatsApp community to share those resources, job opportunities, and the like. And every group is eligible for funding to help host those events, bring speakers on board, and other activities. Something that really is quite powerful is just how big of an audience GFI has. This is something that kind of took me a full year to truly appreciate. But as an organization, we really are one of the most well-known and respected organizations in this space. So when GFI amplifies a story from a student, that gets it in front of thousands of incredibly relevant eyes. We do this, yes, by creating content under the GFI brand, through blogs, social media, that sort of thing. But we also put a spotlight on student leaders in national and international conferences. Examples here being from the Good Food Conference that we hosted in 2023, and very recently at the Future of Protein Production in Amsterdam, we had the Wageningen Alt Protein Project present at an industry conference to get them that sort of exposure that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to have, which was an incredible opportunity, and I'm still so impressed by that team. But of course, what really motivates me is the fact that we do have a community to do this with. And I know that like working at your university, it can kind of feel like you have to do everything alone. And the great thing is, you don't in the Alt Protein Project. That's why we do very deliberately learn from each other. And sometimes, we just hang out because it's great to spend some time with like-minded folks. Knowing Zoom fatigue being what it is, I do just want to draw everyone's attention to the quote in the middle because I recognize coming on another Zoom call isn't always the most exciting proposition. And you were on one now, so thank you for being here. And honestly, most of everything that we do is virtual. But we are incredibly deliberate about making it worth your time and making it engaging. So we always take feedback. I encourage feedback for this session included. And we have a lot of great results. Our students um, do tell us that they're always pleasantly surprised about what a virtual call can be with the Alt Protein Project. And before I close, I do just want to give you a little sneak peek of stuff that is on the horizon that not even everybody in the community knows yet. So first, and this isn't private, but our founder's book was published earlier this month, and it is a fantastic, just like single resource of all things alternative proteins, the science, the history, the potential impact. So the QR code there are different ways that you can help bring that book to your university. I know that a lot of departments, a lot of programs won't do anything until there is a book attached to it. So this is a great way to get it in front of more eyes, students, and faculty included. And then, I'm very excited. For the first time, we will be launching an academic research challenge over the course of this next year, where we will be providing very curated research opportunities and support and mentorship for students to engage in real world alternative protein research. So this is just a handful of opportunities that we have for the alternative protein space and our leaders. That's pretty much it for me. Hopefully, you can tell how excited I am to welcome many of you to the 2026 cohort. Any questions that I've left unanswered, I would love to do my best to answer them. The last thing that I will say is again, please stay in touch. So you're welcome to email me directly. You are welcome to book some time on my calendar if you're curious and want to talk through some things before you apply. I truly mean it. That is entirely fine. It's both my job and what I love to do. So with that, we can open it up to Q&A.
We had one earlier question, which I addressed, but I'll just verbalize it here. Ankit will be graduating in June, and due to their university's academic schedule, new students don't begin their dissertation topics until July. So they're asking, would it be possible for a co-organizer to officially join the project starting in July? I answered and said that at the time of the application, we would still need one of the co-organizers at least to have a qualifying graduation date, but that upon if they were accepted into the program, that new leaders are welcome to then join their existing leadership team come July. But for the actual application, we'll still need at least one of the co-organizers having a graduation date in 2028.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. And I want to make sure that I didn't miscommunicate at all. When we say we're looking for at least two co-organizers, really aim for more. You should not look at two as a cap. A couple of years ago, we actually had an application team of like 15 people, which is not typical. But a solid team of like 3 to 5 can be really helpful and really effective. So I would say even if you have someone who you're expecting to come in a little bit later, still work on building up a more complete team as well. So, for any faculty who are interested in being involved, if you want to establish yourself as that faculty advisor from the very beginning, that's fantastic. And we have had some examples of that where faculty even come to the interview. But maintaining our student-led orientation, we do ask that the students really are the drivers and the leaders of this. We are very excited and happy to work with all faculty, though. All right, now questions are coming in. Okay. So, questions asked maybe it's just that people really don't want to provide feedback. Who knows? So question about research mentorship opportunities, guidance on proposal development, technical research direction, or industry connections. Um, in in the scope of the alt protein project, that is not our primary focus, since it is much more about student leadership within the university. That said, um, the our subject matter experts are much more available to alt protein project students than just any other student where there isn't that sort of connection. Um, so I wouldn't say that they would get to the level of someone who would be signing on to a grant, but there are times, depending on their workload, where they have certainly shared their expertise and advice on research topics. And then a question about the funding support. So we have two primary modes of funding. We have what are called our foundational grants, and that is a total of 1,000 US dollars over the course of a year, that as long as you're in good standing, you are eligible for. And that is really to help you do your general group operations, hosting events, purchasing any sort of materials that you would need for that. Then we also have a merit-based application, what we call our ecosystem building grants. And that is for slightly larger projects that are designed to leave a lasting impact on your university ecosystem. That is up to $5,000 for a single project. I see a question from Erica. As an art research and development with experience in alt proteins and the industry, now back in academia as a researcher. Fantastic. Other type of GFI research programs where I could create a student group to work on alt protein projects. Well, I love when people are asking about even more opportunities to get involved. So I would say established programs, this is probably the primary one that I would suggest focusing on. We do have a number of communities of practice that both you and your students could get involved in. Since I am solo, it will be hard for me to drop all of these links as I talk about them. But if you just search for GF Ideas, that is our recurring community that's basically just a broader version of what we try and do with the Alt Protein project, and then just kind of plugging into our recurring seminars, Science of Alt Protein seminar, Business of Alt Protein seminar. I know from experience that those chats are very active, and a number of people have kicked off collaborations, academic or otherwise, by meeting someone in the chat. So they actually can be quite effective to attend live and engage with the other people who are there. I don't know if that fully answers your question, so please follow up if so. Another question, if GFI Europe has a physical location. Short answer is no. We have areas of concentration for all of our affiliates, typically for the policy teams, just wherever that would be happening. So in the United States, that's Washington, D.C. In Europe, that is going to be Brussels for the EU. But aside from that, basically, we are a remote first institution. And so if you are looking for anybody from GFI to come speak at your university, you can let me know, and I'll see who is either living in the area or might be traveling to the area and see what we can do. Question about being a professor from university. Um, can you apply directly? So, being a student-led organization, we do ask that the applications come directly from those students, graduate or undergraduate. If you would like to be like their official mentor, that is something that we absolutely welcome and encourage. So, whether you have students in your lab or students in your courses that have a similar motivation, that would be the first way that I would suggest kind of mobilizing that effort. Depending on which campus of Delhi University, and apologies if that is distinct from the University of Delhi, we do have a group at the University of Delhi already. So you are welcome to follow up with me afterwards if you would like to get plugged in with them. And as I say that, just making sure that I am dropping my email in the chat as well. So anybody and everybody is welcome to reach out to me. Internship opportunities, ground directly from. In terms of internship opportunities in India specifically, that's a bit outside of my expertise. One thing that I can say is historically, my colleagues at GFI India have put out calls for research fellows and other innovation type projects that are limited term. And I do not know if they have any active currently in terms of applications, but I do know that there are student projects as fellowships occurring as we speak. So I would certainly recommend if that is something that's interesting to you, go through GFI India. They will have much better information to share with you on that. Co-student transfers universities, can they stay involved? That is a great question. That has happened before. So the short answer is yes. We do definitely want to make sure that there is at least two people at like essentially on campus. If you're a commuter campus, I know that distinction is different, and you can talk to me about that. But it can be really hard to do things on the ground by yourself, even if you have support from a different location. So we definitely want to make sure that there is at least two people on campus. If people do move or they are in a semester abroad, we certainly encourage them to stay involved because there is a lot of that organization, planning, and coalition building that you can absolutely do virtually. Another great question about whether there is a requirement to have a functioning work project at the university when applying. And please let me know if I am misunderstanding this. But you do not need to be taking any direct action yet. If you basically have just met, three, four other people and you are motivated to start an alternative protein initiative at your university, you don't need to have hosted any events. You don't need to have established yourself formally within the university structure in order to apply. That is something that we will definitely support you in doing after accepting you into the program. I see a question about food security programs in the Horn of Africa, working in alt protein projects. So given that the alt protein project specifically is university oriented, if you are directly affiliated with the university, that's something that I could help with directly. If not, if you want to give me a little bit more information, I'd be happy to connect you with any of my colleagues. Especially if it's government related, if it's corporate related, I'm sure we would have someone that has a little greater expertise in that area. I would absolutely welcome any feedback that you have on this information session, information that was incredibly helpful, maybe redundant, confusing, anything else. I always look to improve what I am sharing with our community, whether that be the actual content or the method of delivery. This is what I love doing. So please help me get better. The final thing that I do want to offer, since all of you are here, You're someone that I would absolutely be interested in speaking with. So this is a link to my direct calendar. You can set up a meeting with me whenever you would like. If you would like to explore what this application or other types of engagement would be. To answer the question, we will be posting this recording on YouTube, and everybody, as a registrant of this event, will be getting an email that includes that link. All right, so with that, since we are ending a few minutes early, and I learned this from being a teacher, I'm just going to say pretend that it still went to 11 o'clock or whatever to the top of the hour and use the next 5 minutes to submit that feedback form. You'll be doing me a huge favor because I'm not taking any extra of your time, right? So that's only fair. I will end by leaving probably the most important link if you don't already have it. Remember, this is how you apply. So I would love to see your application. Please keep the conversation open as well. The fact that you are here means you are the exact kind of people that I really love supporting to the extent that we can. So thank you again for dedicating your time. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.